Hi, I'm Lena, and welcome to Super Data JP, the channel where we turn Japan's real estate and cost of living numbers into answers you can actually use. Every video here is built on verified government data, not opinions, and not guesses. Whether you're planning to invest, relocate, or just curious what life in Japan really costs, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's numbers.
Sapporo's rental yield is 10.07%. Tokyo's is 5.22%. Almost double, on paper. But the number investors were really counting on just got pushed back 8 years. Here's the real Sapporo story. Start with the headline. Sapporo condos average a 10.07% gross rental yield, against 5.22% in central Tokyo, on the same investment condo category. And the entry price is a fraction of Tokyo's. The average Sapporo unit runs about 14,280,000 yen, roughly $88,148, versus 36,870,000 yen in Tokyo. We've covered Sapporo before as one line in a 5-city comparison. This time we're going deep on Sapporo alone, because the yield number everyone quotes hides a more complicated story. Start with the good news, because it's genuinely unusual. Sapporo's population sits around 2 million, roughly 33% of all of Hokkaido's residents in one city. And unlike almost every other regional Japanese city we've covered on this channel, Sapporo is one of the few major cities outside the Tokyo area that's still gaining population, not losing it. People are moving in from smaller Hokkaido towns that are shrinking even faster, drawn by jobs, healthcare access, and simply more going on. Sapporo is absorbing Hokkaido's own internal migration. This isn't Tokyo-style migration from across the whole country. It's mostly intra-Hokkaido, young people and retirees alike moving out of small, rapidly shrinking towns into the one regional hub that still has hospitals, universities, and a real job market. That shows up in land prices too. Residential land in Sapporo rose 2.4% in the government's 2026 land price survey, with Chuo Ward, the central district, up 5.6%. Zoom out further and land prices are up roughly 40% since 2019, steady, unspectacular growth, without the boom-bust swings some other tourist-driven Hokkaido markets have seen. Which brings up the market most people actually associate with Hokkaido property, Niseko. Well-managed ski chalets and condos in Niseko can post 6% to 10% gross yields in winter season, driven almost entirely by international tourism. But Niseko is a resort market, seasonal, foreign buyer-heavy, and price action driven by tourism sentiment. Sapporo is a real, year-round city economy, a fundamentally different kind of investment. Now, the catch, and it's a big one for anyone buying on future price appreciation. The Hokkaido Shinkansen was supposed to extend from Hakodate all the way to Sapporo by 2030, cutting the trip from Tokyo dramatically and, in theory, pulling in a wave of new investment and tourism. That opening has now been pushed back to the end of fiscal 2038, an 8-year delay, and construction officials have flagged the possibility of further slippage. The cause is mundane but real: tunneling difficulties, construction labor shortages, and stricter work-hour regulations slowing the whole national rail construction pipeline, not just this one line. If part of your Sapporo investment thesis was, the bullet train arrives and prices jump, that catalyst just moved almost a decade further into the future than most projections assumed. Run the actual numbers. A 14,280,000 yen unit at a 10.07% gross yield generates roughly 1,437,996 yen a year in rent before any costs. Call it $8,877. There's a second thing the yield number doesn't capture: what it actually costs to own and operate a property here, winter after winter. Heating adds roughly 15,000 yen to 25,000 yen to monthly utility bills during Hokkaido's coldest months, on top of a normal summer baseline. For a typical house running kerosene central heating, annual heating costs land somewhere between 100,000 yen and 300,000 yen, depending on size, insulation, and how harsh the winter is. Then there's snow removal, or jokusetsu. Budget another 50,000 yen to 150,000 yen a year, depending on property size and how much snow actually falls that season. None of that shows up in a gross rental yield calculation. A property's advertised yield is rent divided by price. It says nothing about what it costs the owner to keep the building functional through a Hokkaido winter. Run those costs against Sapporo's 10.07% headline number and the real net return narrows. The same lesson we've covered before on this channel with hidden ongoing costs in Tokyo, just with a distinctly regional twist here. Remote property management is also a bigger practical challenge in winter. Burst pipes, snow load on roofs, and heating system failures are all higher stakes problems here than in a mild Tokyo winter, and they need a local property manager who actually knows how to handle them. Property insurance is another line item that runs higher here than in most of Japan. Snow load, roof damage, and freeze-related pipe bursts are common enough claims that insurers price Hokkaido properties accordingly. Get a real quote before assuming Tokyo-level premiums. If you're eyeing short-term rentals to capture winter tourism pricing, Japan's Minpaku regulations cap most non-licensed short-term rentals at 180 days a year, and Sapporo's own municipal rules add further restrictions in some residential zones. Verify the local rules before assuming Niseko-style short-term yields are available citywide. Sapporo's own airport, New Chitose, already has direct international connections across East and Southeast Asia, independent of the Shinkansen timeline entirely. A meaningful chunk of the city's tourism demand doesn't need the bullet train to exist at all. On the upside, Sapporo's own tourism base is real and growing independent of the Shinkansen delay, the Sapporo Snow Festival, ski access, and direct flights from other Asian countries already draw steady visitor demand. This fits an investor who wants genuine year-round rental demand from a growing regional economy, values a low entry price and high headline yield, and is comfortable factoring in real winter operating costs rather than chasing a speculative transit catalyst. It's a poor fit for anyone whose entire thesis depends on the Shinkansen arriving soon, or anyone unwilling to budget for the genuinely higher maintenance demands of a snow-heavy climate. Winter severity itself isn't perfectly stable either. Milder winters can cut into ski tourism demand in the Niseko-adjacent market, while heavier snow years push jokusetsu and structural maintenance costs up for every Sapporo landlord, a variable that doesn't show up in any static yield figure. If you want pure tourism upside and can tolerate seasonality and volatility, that's closer to what Niseko offers. If you want a stable, growing city economy with real long-term tenants, that's Sapporo. Sapporo's yield advantage over Tokyo is real, and so is its population growth story, genuinely rare among Japan's regional cities. But the transit catalyst investors were pricing in just got pushed back nearly a decade, and winter operating costs quietly eat into that headline number. Quick recap of the real numbers behind investing in Sapporo. Gross yield 10.07% versus Tokyo's 5.22%, average price 14,280,000 yen, and a Shinkansen extension now delayed to 2038. We've also covered the hidden ongoing costs of Japanese property, and how mortgages and IKEA investment actually work, in earlier videos on this channel. Useful context if Sapporo is on your shortlist. That's the real story behind Sapporo's headline yield. Subscribe for more data-driven breakdowns of real estate and investing in Japan.
And that's today's breakdown. If you're serious about real estate or moving to Japan, research like this is exactly what separates a smart decision from an expensive mistake. Subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive, and drop a comment if there's a city or word you want us to cover next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.